Welcome to Wisdom Journey, the podcast where we explore the path of building an online business from the ground up. Here, I share my wins, struggles, lessons, and experiments so you can learn, adapt, and grow alongside me. I also interview experts in their respective field. Whether you're just starting out or looking for new strategies to scale, this is your space to find inspiration and practical wisdom. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to take you on today's journey. Today on Wisdom Journey, I'm joined by Red, a data-driven marketer, entrepreneur, and founder of multiple ventures in Saudi Arabia. Red has helped countless businesses transform their marketing departments into true growth engines, blending creativity with data to unlock real results. From startups to leaders from startups to established brand, his approach has empowered leaders to make smarter decisions and see measurable impacts. In this episode, he shares practical frameworks, lessons learned from the field, and the mindset shifts creators and entrepreneurs need to thrive into this fast-changing digital landscape. Welcome, Red. Welcome, Red.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join the podcast.
Yeah. What's the full name?
My full name is Redha Alayesh. It's in Arabic and it's kind of hard to pronounce, so people usually just call me Red.
Can you take us back to the moment you realized data wasn't just numbers, but a key driver of growth?
So I remember when I first started, my first small business. It's a side hustle. It was an online store trying to figure out how to sell merchandise, basically T-shirts, cups, and so on. And when I went around asking people, why am I not capable of selling those merchandise, people told me it's you don't know how to market them and so on. So it just became into this whole thing of how can I actually be able to be good at marketing. And when I started to do the basic things of marketing, most people would tell you advertising. So that's kind of how I thought about it at the start and how I started working on it. When I worked on advertising, basically advertising is just numbers. You try to make sure that the cost of running the ad is giving you a good return on investment. So the revenue that comes from the ad and the merchandise is selling covers the cost of the products that you're selling alongside the cost of the ad that you're running. Yeah. And that basic equation is kind of like the fundamentals of marketing. It doesn't only apply to advertising, but you have to apply it throughout the whole journey. And as time went on, I realized that data is more and more important because there are things that are way harder to understand about data and calculate than advertising digitally. Digitally, it's kind of very easy to track certain numbers, impressions, how many people saw your ads, or how many people bought in an online store and so on. But it's kind of difficult if it was a physical store, for example, or something they don't directly buy from a website. So I realized that in the traditional business market, physical stores and so on, usually it's very hard to quantify your marketing activities in general. And then when you go into other stuff like branding or creatives and so on, it becomes also quite hard to measure. Even basic stuff that everyone would think about in marketing, usually the first thing or one of the first things that would come to mind is social media. But how do you actually measure social media? And that's kind of like how it became that it's important to figure out how to measure everything and so on.
Yeah, at the beginning you mentioned that you were fascinated on how traditional businesses, brick-and-mortar businesses, could get data to track and know the number of customers and all those other things. Did you figure out a way to do that?
There isn't a very clear and straightforward way to do that, but there are ways to kind of handle that. Okay. So for example, in cafes, food and beverage,
I'm listening.
It's common to see loyalty points in organizations. So when you buy, they would ask for your number, they would register this receipt that whatever you bought with this number, and then they would calculate. In supermarkets, they do the same. A lot of retail brands and so on. So you'd see it's common in a lot of places that when you go to a specific store, they take your number. And that kind of establishes the basic fundamentals of trying to measure the customer lifetime value. So how much do customers actually spend, and the frequency, how many times do people buy, and how often do they buy, monthly, yearly, multiple times a week, and so on. And then you can go out with the cost of everything you do in marketing and start calculating from that. You'd slowly be able to gather more data based on that person, depending on different things. So you might, for example, provide an offer if people completed a form talking about their personal details. So they, for example, put their age, the neighborhood that they're living on, or the city, and so on. You'd gather some basic demographic data about them, and slowly you build from there. You might be able also to get certain interests from them. So you do a campaign specific for specific interests. If people love, for example, specific movies, or people who love traveling, or people who love to do certain things, maybe yoga, maybe sports. And slowly just you gather people and segment them based on campaign-specific purchases and so on, and possibly even by collaborating with other organizations. And you have the fundamentals of the customer information. Of course, the other marketing activities, then every marketing activities you are going to do, you try to measure. So it depends on the channel. Some things are more clear than others. So for example, when you post on social media, it's very clear to see how many people saw it, how many accounts, and how many people are engaged with their likes and comments, and so on. Some channels are harder to track. So imagine, for example, influencer marketing. Then you'd need to ask the influencer to share the data from that post, maybe after like 3 or 4 days. And then after that, you'd try to figure certain things out, certain other numbers. Usually, how many people moved from social media organic posts. Like ads usually directly lead to a web page or a form or something, but if it's an organic post on Instagram, for example, you tell people to go to the link in the bio, and then they go to your profile and then click on the link. Sometimes a lot of people don't actually use tracking on links, for example, so you can't really specify who and where is this link, whereas advanced analytics marketing, they would put something called UTM code, which is basically can be given to track specific links. So imagine every time you put a link somewhere, you give an influencer, or you send a link on WhatsApp or something, or on maybe emails and so on, you'd put a specific UTM code to track that specific channel or specific place that you put the link on. So you can measure that specifically, and instead of just measuring things in general, you measure specific channels and so on. And from there, you can slowly gather more data and calculate things further.
Many businesses, they claim to be data-driven, right? But they fail in practice. So what are the biggest mistakes you see?
So I see, for example, a lot of people who run social media advertising, which is kind of the first thing you'd think about when companies do social media advertising, but they don't actually track what people do after they leave or they click on the link. So it's kind of very basic. You might spend a small amount, $50, $100, or you might spend hundreds of thousands or even millions on an advertisement, but then you don't know exactly how many people came from that specifically. Especially if you're running multiple social media advertising at the same time, you're not sure if these people came from that source specifically or not. The easiest way to deal with this is by connecting what's called social media pixel. Usually each social media, so for example, Facebook, TikTok, X or Twitter has a pixel, so you can connect that specific piece of code into the website, and then you'd be able to track the data from the ad specifically. That way, you can know how many people came through that ad and how many people bought or registered or any specific data. So this is kind of, I think, the biggest mistake that I've seen. Of course, as things move forward, it becomes different types of mistakes. So, for example, people who have the people who run experiments, sometimes they implement the experiments in ways that don't necessarily lead to data that can be validated. So you do something basic. You'd, for example, run an email marketing campaign. But then when you're running the email marketing campaign, you do one thing, and if it didn't work out, you say email marketing, it doesn't work for my target segment. Whereas if you only run it once, for example, you can't actually measure the result for the whole channel. There could be things that are problematic with the title, for example. There could be problems with the body of the email, the call to action, the journey. Who are you actually sending the emails to? Is it a list that you found on the internet or you bought? Or did people actually opt in to go into this newsletter? So it kind of depends. Some people just make a fast conclusion over things without actually knowing if this is actually the reason for the data. That's kind of an advanced mistake. When people have data, they misinterpret it.
So the first one you talked about was pixel tracking, right? Whether it's Facebook, what's other ad company, Pinterest, Google Ads, and all that, right? And then the other one you talked about is they do experiments and then they implement the wrong thing. Hey, quick break. Before we continue, I'd love for you to join the Wisdom Journey newsletter. Every week, I share exclusive insights, tools, and behind-the-scenes updates to help you stay ahead in your own journey of building an online business. It's simple, practical, and built to help you grow. Sign up today for free at the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, it's the implementation could be wrong in, for example, something as technical as measuring things incorrectly. So you measure, for example, this button, how many times was it clicked? But then instead of putting this piece of code that's supposed to be measuring the button, you put it on a different web page. Or like the installation of the measurement is correct and you're actually measuring the right thing, but you misinterpret the data. So the data is just a number. So the number is low or high, but then why is it like this? Why is it low? Why is it high? Was it normal? And based on that, you try to make reasons. It's high, for example, because we've ran, we've given a discount, for example, so sales went up. Okay, did sales went up because of the discount, or was it, for example, a season that made people buy? It's probably a little bit of both, but then what's having more of an effect? So how many people and how much would people buy without the discount, and how many people would buy without the season? And if it's compounded, would it multiply, or would having both things affect each other negatively somehow? So my for example, maybe providing a discount would increase customers 50%, but if it's a season, it would only increase customers 20%.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So you might be able, or you have to figure out these data slowly. It wouldn't come from one thing, of course, but with time you'd be able to tell if we did
yeah.
this discount, this type of campaign, this kind of thing, based on our customer segments, previous experiments, we would be able to estimate the results. And
Yeah.
slowly, of course, each segment and audience and channels have different results. But yeah.
Yeah. How can small businesses or creators with limited resources start using data effectively?
You can start with like the basic things. Since you're probably a creator, you have a digital presence. Most of what you have is digital. You don't have a lot of physical things, so it's a lot easier to measure. Start with the basics, usually social media. If you are having social media, gather the information from the analytics into one place, preferably by using a tool. Social media tools usually gather all social media into one place and then give you analytics per channel, so
Yeah.
based on the specific platform, and then gives you further data into other stuff. And that usually helps you see what did you do right and what did you do wrong and start analyzing things. Some
Yeah.
social media tools provide helpful suggestions and so on based on analysis and AI and other tools and features that basically help you create better content or figure out certain things out and so on. So tell you, for example, we've noticed that when you publish this type of content, you perform better, or a
Yeah.
general suggestion that this type of content performs better on this platform, for example.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's kind of the first thing you'd start with. If you plan to run advertising, it's not common between creators and small
Yeah.
businesses, but if you plan to do that, make sure to connect the pixels to be able to measure the effectiveness of this. Try as much as possible to find information about clients, or the clients or the people who pay, or people who your audience in general. So the people who even use like the free stuff, the people who consume the content, you try to be able to figure out what do they like, what do they not like, what's their demographic,
Yeah.
what's their interest, what's their behavior like. It's not easy if you have minimal resources to gather a lot of information, but just basic stuff about like age demographics that comes from social media, maybe interest also comes from social media and so on, is usually enough to make a lot of an impact into how can you improve and what should you focus on. So these are kind of like the basics, and then you can slowly move into something or things that are more advanced. So you'd go into your own website or e-commerce store that you'd have. Maybe you'd sell something either digital or physical. Then you'd make sure that in this website you install Google Analytics or other website traffic analytics tools. You create UTM codes for every link that you share. So if you send it to a specific influencer or a collaborator or anyone, telling them that you should share it, you'll be able to know that these people came from this person. And then by using analytics, this UTM code would give you the ability to see the people that came from this person actually did 1, 2, 3. So if, for example, this is kind of common, that you'd see it in, for example, a nano influencer account that has maybe 1,000 followers or maybe 2,000 followers. And then you send it, but these people are actually super active, very interested in a product. And then you'd find like 50 people or 100 people bought from that person. Whereas if you sent it to someone even 100,000 followers, but people maybe are less engaged. They don't trust them as much.
Yeah.
And also not the right audience and other factors makes them buy less than collaborating with that nano influencer. So being able to measure these numbers would give you an advantage on what to do and what not to do. It would tell you that you should focus on that nano influencer rather than working with that influencer that has hundreds of thousands of followers, because of course you're likely to pay less because they have less followers and so on, and you'd have more clients out of them. So the equation would make more sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things. Thank you so much for those recommendations. The
Of
thing
course.
about data is a lot of persons, the mistake I see them make is that they lose the human element in behind those data, right? How do we balance
Yes.
creativity and data without losing the human element in marketing?
Yeah. So marketing has two parts.
Okay.
There's the analytics part and there's the creative part. So for example, when you write content or you create a design or you create a video or any types of content that you'd use your analytics on to figure out whether it works or not, the content part is actually quite creative usually. You should utilize the analytics to tell you what kind of content is more engaging, more influential, and helps you in the business. So for example, maybe some content is fun, very engaging and so on, but doesn't drive business results. So while people actually engage on it, you should say, okay, we shouldn't do this. So the analytics is just a way to make a decision, but the creative part is separate from it. To become more creative, you should follow certain frameworks that help you produce things. For example, some people have certain methodology. For example, asking what, why, where, how, when. 5 WH questions helps you in creating content about different things. And that can be a framework that helps you in creativity and so on. Of course, there are many frameworks and it's not rigid, so you don't have to do one thing specifically. But usually, if you're less creative, using frameworks helps you create more and create better things. And if you're already creative, just try to fine-tune it based on the data to produce results. AI, of course, helps.
Yeah.
But the basic human element is kind of the problem. So when you create things with AI, you have to make sure that it's engaging, that it's not seen as, oh, it's kind of like cheap, or this person just like created this thing without even caring or reading it. So people are quickly distinguishing and stigmatizing AI created things compared to the human level and the human touch. So there are certain mistakes that are acceptable in a human form and maybe even drives more engagement. And there are like these AI mistakes that AI creates, and they're very unforgivable because it's very easy to distinguish them and immediately. So for example, you could ask AI to create a blog post, for example.
Okay.
When you go, let's say about how to make $100 on online. The idea is to help people start how to make money online. You go to create this post, it's probably going to give you a very general answer. You copy the answer, you paste it, and then post it. Without reading it or very skimming it, you don't read it thoroughly, there might be things that are irrelevant to the target audience, or even there could be mistakes or exaggerations, unreasonable things, and so on. So imagine it says something as, usually people, when they use email marketing, in 30 days they would become millionaires. So immediately when you read that, just like I was thinking of how to make and how to start making money online, and you're telling me email marketing is this easy, so it just immediately puts people off because there's like best balance. Whereas actually some human mistakes can be engineered to increase engagement. So they found out that if there are misspelling in AI, or sorry, in blog posts, it actually helps people stay more engaged on the blog post. And they would say, oh, I noticed there's a spelling mistake. So with every 1,000 words, there could be 1 or 2 misspellings. And when people notice them, it increases engagement. So, and it increases focus as well. I noticed this mistake, and then they continue. So there is part of a human error that's actually helpful in making people more engaged. So you notice kind of these small things. So AI is great and it helps you, but just make sure that things are relevant, consistent, and so on, and it's not terrible. AI tends, for example, to put these kind of words that are very academic in general, use words that we don't normally use. So just by saying it, use this kind of words, speak like this kind of person, or so on, you're already increasing how it speaks and improving it to actually something more digestible and better and easier for the audience and more acceptable as well. Just kind of just trying to balance it, take things out, making sure that everything is correct, and then you publish it. Of course, with design, audio, and videos, it's still kind of vague. Sometimes AI creates really good audios, for example, in text to speech, and sometimes you can clearly hear that the voice is AI. Which in some cases it's fine, but in other cases it's not fine. So it depends. So imagine you're selling a course. If the AI voice, if there's AI voice in the course, it would just immediately drops credibility. Whereas if you're saying, for example, if you're saying, for example, oh, we found this tool or created this tool that helps you create something with this, or you're creating a funny video about AI, or you're utilizing it for simple tips and using AI for something very small, very short, and so on, it would be fine. So imagine example reading a definition. Very short, 10 second. AI wouldn't be problematic. And if you're using that for a large massive, people wouldn't say, oh, it's terrible. Whereas if you're reading a blog post, for example, or there's like a 10-minute video or even 1-minute video, where it's supposed to be high quality and so on, images and videos are kind of the same. Whereas sometimes there's something super off about certain things. But of course, the quality for that is increasing and improving. Sometimes there are really high quality videos and design being generated by AI that you could utilize to become more creative, even more human centric and so on. But it has to be driven by someone who can continuously assess whether this is good or whether this is not good, whether this should be this would be helpful to my audience and utilize and so on, or whether there are certain elements that needs to be improved. Having a checklist or rubrics to evaluate things usually help you logicize things and make things more logical, because when you immediately or you get answers really fast, you just feel it's good naturally.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of immediate. But when you look at it after like 2 hours, you realize that it's not as good as you thought or you felt. So
Yeah.
having a rubric to assess certain elements, whether they're using the right colors. So you'd have certain colors, are they using it? There are specific style or specific kind of thing. Are they using complex grammar, for example? So if there is like a very long sentence that has a compound whatever, I'm not sure if
Structure. Yeah.
yeah. So if you saw these immediately, you'd say, oh, one of things are off, I'll change it. So these are some of the helpful tips on how to become more creative, how to make sure it's humanized, and how to make data work in your favor to make things work more creative and get better results.
Thank you so much, Red. While we are talking about data, I noticed one thing we did not really talk about in terms of the examples we gave. A lot of people when they hear data, the first thing they think about is, numbers. Like, oh, data, like, oh, these numbers, how many visitors, how many views, how many times people watch stuff and all those things. Which for the majority of the time it is. There are other forms of data like, what's the word? Like surveys, right? Interviews with your target customers, right? Getting to talk to them for 15 minutes and asking them, oh, why do you buy our products? Oh, this thing, why do you keep coming back? Where did you first hear about our product and all that, right? So, in terms of the grand scheme of things, how does that integrate into this data we're talking about, and is it that important, or is it just one of those things?
Yeah. So when you're creating research or you're trying to figure out your audience, numbers is one way to actually utilize it, but it's not everything. There are things, descriptive information that's not numerical. Usually when people, for example, try to explain emotions, which is part of the things that could be measured into how people feel about certain things and so on. How satisfied are they about your product? So this is kind of like very clear way to say 100% satisfied about this product, or I'm not quite satisfied, and maybe like 50% satisfied or so on. But there are things that are kind of very hard to see. So there are things like social listening tools, which basically this is kind of common for much larger brands, where they would be able to see how people talk about their brands. Are they talking about it in a way that, oh, this is a helpful brand? Are they talking about, oh, this is a fun brand? This is a brand that harms, I don't know, children. This is kind of how positive, what kinds of feelings, are they making them angry? Are they upset about support? And different things. So you'd be able to, these tools basically try to analyze the speech into different emotions and so on, and give you reports and data about it to understand it. But of course, the basic thing is actually descriptive information and not numerical information. And for smaller brands, it's harder to create or utilize these huge tools that needs hundreds and thousands of audiences and people to actually be able to create very small amount of data in numerical values. So the easiest way to do that is by what you suggested is, for example, like talking to customers directly in interviews, seeing them. By just sitting with the customer, you're not only increasing the engagement directly because they saw that you're interested about them, that you wanted to improve their journey, and that you're trying to improve things and so on. So that immediately comes in when you tell them, oh, I'm, for example, one of the people responsible for this. I work here and I want to improve the experience, or anything that you say to try to get them talking about their experience. What do they think? What do they want? What did they like and what they didn't like? And so on. That is descriptive information that should be utilized and would be really helpful for smaller brands on how to navigate with things.
You've
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I just want us to touch on something really important. You've used marketing departments that actually deliver results. What's the difference between busy work, or what I also like to call shadow work, versus real growth work in terms of these marketing things that could do to grow the business?
Yeah. So there are two types of numbers that people usually look on, or metrics that people look on: vanity metrics and the metrics that drives results. So vanity metrics are metrics that don't directly drive results into the business. So for example, if a certain video published on TikTok or anywhere got 2 million views, that doesn't necessarily mean that you'd be able to have revenue, or you don't have revenue. Would you have sales or not? Sometimes you publish something and then it becomes viral and reaches 1 or 2 million, or maybe even more, but then your sales don't really go up, or go up in a very small amount. And sometimes something very small, like getting 20 leads, could turn into a huge number of sales, because these are committed and so on, and they might be able or recommend their products on their networks or other things. So vanity metrics are metrics that don't directly drive results to the revenue and the business. And the metrics that you should focus on are that are directly relevant. So you'd be able to tell,
Yeah,
for example, that out of every 10 leads, we close one customer. So if we had 100 leads, we would close 10
close 10
customers.
customers.
It's very clear. It's based on
Yeah,
previous data. We know this. And so being able to measure these kind of metrics is important. Also, the whole growth things and focusing on what's actually working should be utilized based on the data. So it's not just about doing as much as possible. It's about trying to figure out what works and what doesn't, and then focus on what works more. So
yeah.
if
Wow.
you know for sure that this type of advertisement makes this amount of money, if I spend $2,000 on this specific video, I know that it would give me $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 from this product in, for example, 24 hours or 7 days or 1 month or however amount. But if you have a clear number of, if I did this and then throughout this many time, I'd get this results. I proved it. I've did it like 2-3 times before, or even in a smaller amount and so on. You'd be able to estimate what works, and that's important to make decision to work on something productive. Whereas if you just did things to fill your schedule and make yourself busy, you might do things that are not really valuable or doesn't drive growth. Oh, I saw some company did this thing, I want to do it, and then that doesn't actually improve your revenue or
Yeah,
improve your company. And that's kind of where it comes in. And where data has to be led into making certain decisions and so on.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Red. Where can people learn more about what you do and also connect with you?
Of course, I'm usually most active on LinkedIn, so you can follow me on LinkedIn.
What's the
It's Redha. My last name is Alayesh. This is also my, I have my own personal website where I provide a free assessment on how to build and grow marketing departments. So basically you can go to my website, take the assessment and so on. Again, the website link is redhaalayesh.com. redhaalayesh.com. So those two places you can reach out to me. You can always just connect on LinkedIn and send me a message. I'll reply.
Yeah, thank you so much, Red. It's been an absolute delight to just listen to you talk about data and how you approach data even and the fact that you broke it down and made it relatable. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was thanking you. I know the internet might not have allowed you to hear what I was saying.
Yeah, sometimes it's cutting, but of
Yeah,
course, I'm
yeah,
happy to be on this podcast, and I'm looking forward to provide value. So feel free to reach out anytime, and I hope this was helpful and informative for everyone involved.
yeah. Thank you so much. I'll put the links Red mentioned on the in the description and in the show notes, so listeners can just click and go directly to the website. Thanks for tuning into Wisdom Journey. I hope today's episode gave you practical steps and fresh ideas to keep moving forward. If you found value, be sure to subscribe and share this podcast with a fellow creator or entrepreneur who'd love to learn too. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and the link in the description for more resources, experiments, and lessons straight to your inbox. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep walking your own wisdom journey. Yeah.